So let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. They traded away Amari Cooper. They got that third-round pick in return, and they swapped 6th and 7th-round picks. But, Joe, this team is kind of in desperation right now. Similar to the Raiders, I don't think they're in as bad a shape. Obviously, we're not talking about the defenses. We're just purely talking about the offense at this point and the impacts of this trade. First off, I mean, a guy I think is kind of interesting is wide receiver Jerry Jeudy of the formerly of the Denver Broncos. I know you've got a bad taste in your mouth due to that he was a Denver Bronco and how bad he was, but he was traded to the Browns, and he did sign a contract extension with the Browns. He has a contract until 2027, so he's effectively on the team for the next 4 years. Now, his dead cap is alarming. $41 million this year.
Yeah, they're giving him heavy guarantee on the deal. So
I mean, they really can't effectively get out of this deal until 28. Now, you could say he's in quarterback jail, should I say?
Purgatory
right now? Yeah, purgatory as far as what to do. But he becomes the one, and targets are going to be vacated now.
Yeah, he's not a one though. That's the problem.
So, what do you do with a guy like Jeudy? Do you think his career is basically evaporated and you're basically like just get rid of him as much as possible?
I mean, Amari Cooper couldn't get things done for fantasy with DeShaun Watson. I don't think Judy's going to. I mean, he's not a one. Like he's not a contested catch guy. When the going gets tough, he's not the guy. He needs to be absolutely wide open and running in wide open spaces. I don't know. The Browns offense, like I mentioned to you, like once this trade happens, does this mean Nick Chubb could possibly get traded? He's an impending free agent this upcoming year. I don't know what happens to this Brown offense because they did this to themselves. I mean, DeShaun Watson has been absolutely terrible. They fully guaranteed his contract. They can't get out of it. I don't know how many Browns pieces I'd want. Like you can,
now you're going all over the board. So wait. You're talking about Nick Chubb. You're talking about Watson.
I'm circling back to Jerry Jeudy here. If I could trade away Jerry Jeudy in hopes of maybe somebody like you who thinks he could step up, I'd absolutely trade him.
Okay, so you would basically say, take this opportunity to get anything you can out of the guy and get rid of him.
100%, yeah, because Deshaun Watson's not going anywhere, and honestly, I don't think he's getting any better. I mean, maybe if I just don't think him and Stefanski are a good match. Maybe if a new coach comes in there and a new philosophy, maybe somebody gets more out of him. But I don't know. I just don't know how a guy goes from being, a top 10 quarterback in the league to like all of a sudden
not even can't top play. 10, top 5, I'd say.
I mean, do you realize the Browns are the only offense in football that hasn't scored 20 points? They haven't even scored 20 points in a game. I mean, it's just, and now they don't have Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, Watson right now, I mean, when you talk about DeShaun Watson, his value is absolutely to the bottom of the barrel. I mean, and here's the thing. It is probably, and this is not hyperbolic, it is probably the worst contract in sports history, besides maybe Barry Bonilla, whatever this guy's name is for the New York Mets. Bonilla, yeah. Bobby, there you go. So I'm just like, they gave him a fully guaranteed contract. He's at $27.9 million as a cap hit this year. The next 2 years, he has a whopping $72.9 million, and they got a void year of $26.9 million on top of it. I trust Adam Schefter. He does this. He's been in the business a lot longer than I have. I cannot rack my brain how he could possibly think that was a good move by the Browns. Like, they came out and said, oh, they did it for salary cap management. It made sense. Yeah. Based on everything I understand, it makes zero sense. The guy can't play ball. Why would you purposely take base money? I guess it's already guaranteed anyways, but you basically restructured that, converted into a signing bonus, and passed it down later years. I just don't understand. I mean, I guess I could say like, well, the salary cap's always going to increase, so I guess
and then they get to roll over some cap from this year over. I guess I mean. I don't know, but yeah, he did say it was just from a cap saving standpoint is why they did it. I mean, like you guys kind of.
The only thing I could think about is that it's fully guaranteed, and there are no contracts that are fully guaranteed. So usually you're converting base money that isn't guaranteed and converting it into it. So that's the only way I could possibly think. But the Browns are in such bad shape. I mean, they have to play the guy. I just don't understand how they can't at this point because, I mean, if you're an owner, would you be wanting to see this guy on the sideline collecting $200 million? I mean, that's sickening. So I think unless a new head coach comes in, it's very clear. We've seen enough games, like you said. Kevin Stefanski and his offensive playing style does not fit with Deshaun Watson. It just does not.
But, yeah, and this also just goes to show, like, it because they had to keep Deshaun Watson on the field, like they literally could not keep Joe Flacco because fans would have just been clamoring for Joe Flacco because he obviously could run the Stefanski offense.
No, they couldn't. So I mean, at this point, though, based on his cap situation, like you can't trade him. I mean, you can't cut him. I mean, if they were to cut him, you're talking about $172 million.
Yeah, people thought the Broncos situation with Russell Wilson was bad. This is on another level.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do it. I mean, there's just not. I just don't see it happening. I just don't. So it's just like they have to figure out how can we make this player work. I don't know. I just it's one of those situations. I mean, if you have Deshaun Watson, I mean, hopefully you didn't pay him big money in a salary cap league. If you have a dynasty, you may have cut him at this point if you're not in a super flex league.
Yeah, I mean, I know the owner in our salary cap league, man, he also gave him fully guaranteed contract, and he's as stuck as the Cleveland Browns are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so he's in terrible shape. So, Browns are a dumpster fire at this point, and I don't know what else can be done. Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. You talked about Nick Chubb. He's on a 1-year deal. He's 29 years old. His cap hits $6.275 million. I think this is the end of the line for Nick Chubb. He had a gruesome injury. They could trade him. And I think that the other team would, I'm not sure exactly what the other team would receive. I think it's roughly about $1.5 million that they would receive if they got Chubb. I could see Chubb getting traded. At this point, maybe they would. I mean, at this point, like you said, like what's the point in having him unless you want to retire as Cleveland Brown?
Once you trade a guy like Amari Cooper, it just opens the door for other players to be left, and they're almost just, acquiring capital to kind of try to rebuild this offense back up.
Yeah, so I mean, I could definitely see Nick Chubb going, but I mean, he's a win now player, but we don't even know. I mean, they're talking about him coming back from IR.
Yeah, I mean, they've opened up the practice window, so he's going to be back soon. The question is, what kind of version of Nick Chubb do we get coming off of that gruesome injury? I mean, we know that it generally the first year of an injury like that usually isn't good, and it's usually the second year, outside of what Breece Hall was able to do last year, but his Chubb's injury was way worse than what Hall went through.
So another guy who could be kind of interesting here, tight end David Njoku. Now, I know you're not as interested in the guy. He's on a 2-year deal with the Browns. He's 28 years old, and his dead cap this year is $30 million. Next year, $20.8 million. He's not going anywhere. He will definitely stay with the Browns at this point. They don't have a lot of options, so he could get a ton of targets. He's relatively young. What do you do with a guy like David Njoku? Browns' situation is bleak. Do you try to trade for him? Hopefully he gets better. Watson's going to be the quarterback more than likely going forward. You just try to see, like you said with Jeudy, are you using that same philosophy? If someone's willing to give you something, just trade him and get the most out of him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would not be trying to trade for Njoku, despite I know like the tight end landscape is rough. I get that the situation looks good for him. I just don't trust Deshaun Watson, and him and Watson have never really been on the same page. Joe Flacco is what made finally Njoku like the tight end asset we all thought he could be for fantasy. So I think I would either hold him in hopes that he does get the volume, or go ahead and like see what you can get for him. If people are, I know you in a video you're saying to go out and potentially trade for him. So
I think I think immediately he could be interesting. I guess it depends on how much you have to give up for him. I'm not looking to give up the farm,
right?
And I don't think you'd have to, but maybe you would. It really all depends on the owner.
Yeah, I mean, if the owner wants too much, definitely don't give up the farm. But if you can get them, if you can get them in a buy low window, maybe other people think like me, just don't believe in Deshaun Watson getting it to him. I think I'm in the minority, though. I think most people are excited about the potential, target opportunity for him.
Well, not to mention, Joe, I didn't even mention this, but the Browns are at negative $40.9 million in cap space next year. They are just circling the drain at this point right here. It's stinky over at the Cleveland Browns. So a few other players here we want to talk about. Wide receiver Elijah Moore, a guy who you and I both, I think, had some promise. Obviously played near Jets, didn't do so well. He's in the final year of his rookie deal, believe it or not. He'll be a free agent next year. Has had some concussion issues. Don't see him coming back to the Browns. Don't know if they'll try to resign. They may again clear house, have a new GM, new head coach. Is he a guy from a dynasty standpoint you kick the tires on, see if you can't get him? I mean, he's now the wide receiver too. Amari Cooper is no longer there. What are your thoughts on Elijah Moore?
Yeah, I don't know what to think about Elijah Moore, honestly. I don't think, he is interesting, but I don't know if I'd be trading for him, but if he was somehow like on the waiver wire, I do think, he could be like a speculative ad, but he's not a guy I would be actively trying to acquire by any means.
I don't think he'd be on a waiver wire in dynasty leagues, to be honest with you. Maybe people decide to cut him because he hasn't been all that good. I'd be kind of interested in him. Although he hasn't shown much in his 3 years, so I guess the question is how good could he really be? I guess that, but he was on the Jets when they were really bad, and he was on the Browns when they weren't so good. So it's like, have we really seen him in the best opportunity?
No, that was the thing. I was excited for him once he was with the Browns, and back when I still had hopes for DeShaun Watson, but now literally, it's just seeing him not being able to play. I don't know. It's tough for me to envision anybody like Amari Cooper was disappointed for fantasy. And he's a good on-the-floor wide receiver.
All right, our final player we're going to be talking about, wide receiver Cedric Tillman of the Cleveland Browns. He's in his second year of his rookie contract at 4 years. Former third-round pick out of Baylor. Hasn't had a lot of playing opportunity, but now that Amari Cooper is no longer there, a lot of buzz that he could be someone who could be pretty good. He's a different receiver, right? He doesn't have the same profile that Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy have. He's more of a taller, big-bodied guy. Do we kind of see an emergence of him, and do you have any interest from him from a dynasty perspective? Probably a guy who, honestly might have been on your taxi squad, guy who you really weren't that interested in. Kind of we talked about earlier, but a guy like Malachi Crowley, you drafted him hoping he's just sitting him in your taxi squad, or, you drafted him in your third-round pick. You're hoping that something happens. What are your thoughts on Cedric Tillman?
Yeah, I think I'm more excited about him just because, like you said, he's more of that big body guy. Maybe Watson can just throw him a 50-50 ball and hope he can go ahead and get it. That's the thing. Like Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy are very similar wide receivers in my eyes. So that's the one reason makes me less excited for Elijah Moore. But I do think, Tillman being a younger receiver and a bigger body guy, maybe he is able to get something going with DeShaun Watson.
I think it's interesting too. You got to remember, when DeShaun Watson was successful, and I'm not saying they're the same player, but you have the build of a DeAndre Hopkins, right? He was a type of player that Watson really excelled with. Cedric Tillman's more of a big-bodied receiver like a DeAndre Hopkins. That could be a better fit than Elijah Moore, who's kind of a, he doesn't have a high ADOT. He's kind of a short target guy. And then obviously Jeudy, I guess, is mostly known for his route running and speed, but he also has a ton of drops. So maybe Tillman, ends up being a guy who could end up being good for that offense.
Yeah, I agree. Both, like, to me, Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy are both kind of guys that you need to get in space in order for them to catch it. They're not really going to get those contested balls, but I think that's where, Tillman, I think he's a pretty good route runner, and I think he'll be able to get those contested catches, rather than those guys.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about a lot of players and the implications of these trades. It's not just about Davante Adams and Amari Cooper. These are ripple effects that affect all these teams, and that's the NFL for you. And we wanted to talk to you about it from a dynasty perspective and salary cap, because based on these contracts, it matters, and how you end up deciding how many years you want to sign these players for. It all kind of comes together. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.